Hello and good evening. Happy Thursday to all of you tuning in, or for those of you who are watching this on replay, happy whatever day of the week it is. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you tuning in, whether you're tuning in on YouTube, on Facebook, or tonight is our first time streaming to LinkedIn. So I'm so excited to have the LinkedIn crew here as well. If you have comments, questions as we're going through our topics during these lives, please feel free to drop them. If I don't address them directly during this session, I'll make sure to drop answers alongside the videos on whatever platform you leave the comments on. So make sure that you don't hesitate to ask those questions. Love to serve my community. Stress and burnout are big problems, right? I think now more than ever, we're talking about these as they relate to our work. And so I'm on a mission to make sure that we're viewing our bodies differently. We're viewing our bodies as these incredible resources for the way that we work, where we're replacing the concept of hard work with the concept of working really well. So that requires us to really invest in our physical selves, understanding that the human behind the human resource can be a really valuable asset to the organization. So I want to talk about this particular topic that's been very popular in questions I've been fielding over the past several months. We're now 15 months plus into this kind of new era, right? This forced pandemic reality of how we're working. For some of us, the way we worked never changed. We were frontline essential workers, and so we've been in the office every day nonstop. For others, it demanded a shift into working from home or working in a hybrid format. A lot of us now are coming out of lockdown restrictions and asking the question of, what does future work look like for me? A lot of organizations are pondering, what does a hybrid work environment look like? Are we more productive when we allow employees to work from home? How do we still collaborate? How do we still provide that team environment if we're not meeting face to face? So with that comes this question of, okay, if I'm working from home long term, how do I make sure that I'm still implementing boundaries for my own wellness, right? And when we're in the office, the boundaries are a little bit more clear. We walk in the door or we punch in for the day and our workday starts. When we walk out of the door, in theory, our workday has ended. But when we're working from home, those lines seem a little bit more blurred. So I want to dive into some of the tips that I provide either to my community or with clients that I'm working on one-on-one with, of how to implement healthy boundaries when you're working from home or if you're working in a hybrid format. So let's dive into these topics. So first and foremost, it's important to identify your values and priorities and communicate them. Identify your values and priorities and communicate. Most importantly, communicate this to your team and also to your family. It's important for your team to recognize how you work well, the methods of communication that are most effective for you to receive and to give, right? When we're communicating effectively, when we're creating expectations, meeting and exceeding them, that's how we function really well as a unit, as an organization, as a productive team. So you need to identify your values and your priorities and communicate them. For some of you watching, you are passionate about your work. Your work is your identity. It is your life fulfillment, and it is at the top of your priority list. For others, it might not be, and that's okay. We're all bio-individual, which means we all have a different relationship to work. That does not detract away from our skills, our capability of providing value to our organization, but we want to be able to identify what our values and priorities are so that we don't feel resentment to our organization for overstepping boundaries when we've never implemented them. This is something that I was very guilty of for a long time, of resentment to my employer for me fielding phone calls, text messages, emails, all hours of the day and night, but I never communicated what my boundaries were. I never communicated, hey, my phone is going to be off after 9 p.m. If you need to get a hold of me, here's the way of doing so. You have the opportunity of understanding what your organization's needs are from you, what your needs are from your organization, and then implementing those boundaries. So that's my first suggestion. Suggestion number 2 is dedicate space to work. Now, in our household, this is my office. This is my space to work. It is a place where I can close the door, where I can have privacy, where I can leave at the end of my day. I know not everyone has a dedicated office in their working from home space, but you need to have something that is dedicated to work. When I was in college, my dad gave me a great piece of advice. He said, never do your homework from your bed. And I'm sure there are plenty of you watching this tonight or whenever you're watching it who are guilty of maybe taking a phone call, maybe taking a meeting from the comfort of your bed early in the morning or late at night. Maybe you check your email in bed. Here's the thing. Our brains love excitement, but our body loves routine. So if you're doing work in spaces that aren't completely dedicated to work, it's going to confuse your body. If you're working from your bed, it's going to disrupt those patterns of association for your body to say, this is the place where I sleep, and this is the place where I'm productive. So dedicate your workspace to being where you work. Don't use it for anything else. Create a boundary around this place. When you get up from this place, you are done working or you are taking a break. Speaking of getting up from your work, I love this tip, which is to employ startup and shut down rituals for your workday. And I use the word rituals very intentionally here because when we were going into the office, we had this dedicated space, this time in which we were commuting from point A to point B. For some of us, it was a matter of a handful of minutes. For others, it was a much longer commute. It was time where we could decompress from whatever environment we had just left behind, whether we were leaving behind the home to go to work or whether we were leaving behind work to go home. When we no longer have that time for our brain to say, okay, it's working time, or on the other end of things to say it's decompression time, then again, we start to lose those boundaries. We start to blur the lines between when we work and when we don't work. Now, I encourage you to take this one step further. Whatever your startup ritual is, I want you to create an abbreviated version of that startup ritual and incorporate it anytime you feel inclined to return to work after you've already shut down for the day, right? So my last corporate job, I was an engineering and maintenance manager for a manufacturing facility. If I had had that job 30 years prior and there was a motor that went out on a production line, I would maybe have to get in my car and drive to the workplace in order to solve that problem. In the new millennium, I could solve that problem in part from my phone. I'm not going to install the motor, but I can certainly get the motor on order from a supplier and get it in that night so that we could repair the line and get it back up and running. I could do that from home, right? It was so easy for me to wake up in the middle of the night, hop on my computer and get a motor on order. So that ability to solve problems is much more present, right? Which can be a really great thing. That can be really valuable for our organizations. But what I encourage you to do is to ask yourself, is this problem so urgent that I go through all of the steps of my startup ritual in order to return to work? For example, if your startup ritual is to brew yourself a cup of tea, put on some music, get dressed for the day, maybe you move your body a little bit, and then you start work, and then your abbreviated version is brew yourself a cup of tea, stretch your body, get to work. Is it worth you brewing a cup of tea and stretching your body in order to answer that email or respond to that text message or open up that spreadsheet and get back to work? If the answer is yes, great, do it. If the answer is no, move on with your night. Throughout your workday, incorporate micro breaks. right? You don't have the water cooler time that you had in the office. If you think back to this pre-pandemic time, there were hours that we spent in the workplace, and there were moments within those hours that weren't necessarily productive in the standard sense. So they weren't productive in terms of solving problems or advancing metrics, but they were productive in how they were building teams. They were productive in how they were feeding you as the individual employee. So they were breaks, right? Opportunities to rest the mind from deep critical thinking and then resume work. So it's important for you as you're working from home to recognize that for you to work nonstop those 8 hours is an unrelenting pace. Give yourself the opportunity for micro breaks. Get up, stretch your legs, go for a quick walk, even to the end of your driveway, and get back to work. It'll give your brain the refresh it needs in order to continue to be productive. I also encourage hydration throughout the day, making sure you're drinking plenty of water. That will encourage some micro breaks as you have to get up to make sure that your body is functioning properly. But I encourage you to never eat at your desk. Never eat at your desk, unless, of course, it's the only time of day in which the meeting can be scheduled. I really encourage you to find time to eat away from your desk. You see, when we multitask, it causes digestive stress, it reduces our energy potential, it lessens our ability to assimilate key nutrients, and we can lead to some nutrient deficiencies. So by prioritizing meal times away from where we're working will increase our energy levels, our productivity, or creativity throughout the rest of our day. So don't eat at the desk. And last, but certainly not least, make time for yourself, right? Make time for yourself. Even CEOs of the biggest corporations make time for themselves. CEO of Starbucks starts his day every day with a ride on his bike. Even the CEOs of the biggest organizations are making time for themselves, and you can make time for yourself too. The demands of life, of work are many. I understand that, but you can only work so well when your body is depleted, when it hasn't been nourished. So make time for yourself by investing those moments in your physical self, in your mental self, in your emotional self. You are increasing your ability to problem solve, to be creative, to be disruptive and innovative within your workplace. If we continue to just go at a relentless pace, we will burn out. And when we burn out, we lose that spark, we lose that passion, we lose that ability to provide the value that we want to be known for. So make the time for yourself. If you have questions about any of these suggestions that I've made tonight, please feel free to either drop them on these videos or reach out to me directly in DM. You can do that on any of the platforms in which I'm streaming tonight. I'd love to have a conversation with you. If you feel like stress is dominating your life, if you're feeling like you have a hard time with incorporating the boundaries to be able to provide balance for your health, please reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about that, because it requires small, sustainable steps towards action and change. Have a wonderful night. I will see you back next Thursday, same time, same place. I will be bringing more information and more knowledge about how you can continue to work well, increase your energy, and fend off burnout. Have a great night.